Hi, I'm going to show you how to Ewrap cast on for a flat panel on the 36-inch, 5/8 inch gauge Universal S loom by CinDWood Looms. I'm going to just cast on using Ewrap, and to start that, since I'm doing a flat panel, I'm going to cast on with this beam peg 1, so that if I were to cast on the entire loom, I would know that the last colored peg, since I'm working as a flat panel, would be my turning peg where I would need to come back and work the opposite way. So when you're working a flat panel, you're going to cast on one direction and then turn and cast on a different direction. Now you don't need to cast on all of the pegs for the flat panel. I'm going to show you how, just as an example, how I'm going to cast on 20 pegs using Ewrap. If you wanted to, you could do all of the pegs for like a larger blanket. You could cast on 40 pegs for shawls. Really, it's up to you. I'm going to do an Ewrap cast on, and I'm going to show you how to begin then with a purl row using a slip stitch edge, which I use a lot for casting on blankets and shawls. It gives a nice, it's an easy way to cast on, and the garter stitch doing with an Ewrap and then a purl row prevents your edges from curling. So it's a great way to begin a lot of different projects. So to cast on, you could either place a slip knot, or you could take your working yarn and wrap it around the peg that's the anchor peg, and then you just simply, I'm doing the Ewrap cast on, so I'm Ewrapping coming from the back of the peg, 1, 2, and then I'm casting on, and this is just the Ewrap cast on. And I'm doing just the Ewrap stitch. This is just the stitch. We're not actually knitting yet. And like I said, I'm going to just do up to 20 pegs. If I was going to make a blanket, I'd use all the pegs. So I have peg 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Now I'm going to go back and double check that I counted right. Yeah, and I've now casted on 20 pegs. So my last stitch I've casted on with an Ewrap is on peg 20. Now to begin doing a slip stitch edge afghan or shawl or whatever you're making, after you Ewrap cast on, you're going to start by skipping the first peg and purling what is now the second peg, or I guess if you wanted to count it, it's peg 19, but I'm going to start over. So you're skipping the first peg and you're going to purl the second all the way through the end of the row. Okay, so like I said, you're going to purl each stitch in the row, skipping the first peg, but the last peg, when you get back, we're not going to purl. So we've Ewrapped this peg, but now we're going to bring it, since we're not working it, we're going to bring it up to the front and purl the second peg. And I'm using a worsted weight yarn here. You can use, depending on your project, you use the weight of yarn that's required. And then, so this is an Ewrap cast on. And this is how you start. This is the easiest way to start a project on a flat panel, working as a flat panel with a slip stitch edge. And like I said, the slip stitch just means, sometimes people write SL in the pattern, sometimes they write SK. It's skip or slip, which means you don't work that stitch. So if it says to cast on pegs 1 through 20, and then row 1 is SK1, P, 19, K20, or K1, then that means that you're skipping the first peg if it says like SK1 or slip 1 in the pattern. And skipping the first peg in the row or slipping the stitch creates what is called a slip stitch edge, which gives you a nice braided border for your flat panel objects. So I am continuing to purl. Bringing the bottom up over the top, through the bottom, taking a loop that was on before, Okay, and like I said, we're purling every peg in the row, but with the slip stitch edge, no matter what the row is calling for, with whatever the last peg, you always want to do a knit stitch. Now you could do a flat knit, or you could do an Ewrap. It really depends on what the pattern calls for. The flat knit gives just a little bit of a different look than the Ewrap. Since I'm starting my next row with an Ewrap, I'm going to Ewrap this peg. And now I'm ready to start my next row for my flat panel, doing the slip stitch edge. And for this, I'm just going to do a row of Ewrap. So I've Ewrapped the last peg, and now because I want to do a slip stitch edge, I'm skipping the first peg and then Ewrapping each peg after that, bringing the bottom stitch up over the top. Now this will give you a garter. If you could keep continuing on your flat panel like this, if you had the entire blanket, this would give you like a garter stitch blanket, or for however many, or for whatever the pattern calls for. It could be a garter border. You could start your blanket with the Ewrap and then the purl and do like an Ewrap purl. If you're doing your own pattern, just make sure you keep track. And this last peg here, I find if I'm coming back on the Ewrap, that doing a Ewrap works best. Like I said, just keep track of how many rows you've cast on, because if you're going to do something else in the middle, when you get to the end, you're going to want to do the same number of rows if you're not following a pattern that you started with. So if you did 4 rows of purl, knit, you're going to want to end with purl, knit. So I'm just going to I've knit this last peg, and now what I'm going to do, and what you could actually do to speed up the process, which I've found, is that you can Ewrap the entire row. And I'll show you that quick here So if it tells you to cast to Ewrap, 40 pegs, you could Ewrap all of those. And then if you're doing a purl row followed by it, instead of knitting over and then coming back and purling, I have had these already Ewrapped and I didn't knit over before. I can knit them over now and then purl it right away. And this just helps speed up the garter stitch a little bit faster, since you're not having to knit over after you do an Ewrap. The important thing if you're going to do this though is to keep your tension consistent. And then I'm purling all the way, knitting over, and then purling all the way, and then the last peg again, or the first peg, but the last peg in the row, we're going to knit, and I'm going to use an Ewrap. And so that is how you Ewrap, cast on, and purl using a slip stitch edge for a flat panel. Hope that was helpful. Thanks for joining me.